And I should start just by thanking SPY and the Templeton Foundation for making this work possible. Thanks to a growing number of experimental researchers, including many of you here, we're starting to develop a significant body of evidence on what works in fundraising. So at this year's conference and last year's, you could see many examples of these. And a variety of different techniques have been looked at, some of them repeatedly, such that we've actually got robustness of our evidence across multiple studies, right? One study could always give us a false negative or a false positive, but some things seem to work repeatedly across a number of studies. So for example, offering a gift to a potential donor before requesting the donation, or announcing seed funding, so saying someone else has already donated to the cause. These have been found repeatedly to increase the number or the amount of donations raised. And this is true across a variety of settings. So the gift could be a pen or a book. The fundraiser could be by mail, or it could be door to door. Seed funding has been used for a variety of different causes. And so there seems to be something pretty robust here. These things definitely seem to be having a positive effect on gifts. And the question that we'd like to ask is why this is the case. So what is it about these techniques that is motivating donors to give more money? And are these potential donors benefiting from these techniques? So are they actually made better off in the same way that the charity is because it receives more donations? Or are they possibly made worse off? I think this is a question of interest both to researchers and practitioners. We'd like to know more about donor psychology, and I think practitioners would probably like to know whether or not they're making their donors better off. So there are a variety of theories that are consistent with these techniques having positive effects. This is not an exhaustive list. One example is signaling theory, that these may convey some positive information about the organization. Say if someone else has already donated, they must have verified that this is a high quality organization, and therefore I should donate as well. You can have coordination problems, in particular when there are, say, fixed cost of producing the charitable good, or say it can only be produced if we all contribute. Knowing that someone else has contributed makes this more likely, and therefore makes me more willing to give. Or it could be that these things are increasing social pressure, so making this person essentially feel guilty that they should give. And these obviously have different types of effects on the potential donors. So in this project, we're running some natural field experiment fundraisers motivated by a little bit of theory to try to distinguish these different mechanisms for why these fundraising techniques might work. So we're focusing on two techniques. One is offering a pen to the potential donor before asking them for funding. And the other is announcing a $5 seed gift that has been received by someone else. What we're going to do is we're going to interact these with opportunities to avoid the fundraiser in order to try to isolate the social pressure component of these techniques' effects. So we're going to put warning flyers onto the doors of households that are going to be approached for a gift. And in some cases, these flyers have a means by which the person can opt out of the fundraiser at very low cost. And then ultimately, we'd like to do some structural estimation of the utility function and try to see how these different techniques might be entering. Results to date, unfortunately, are limited. So this work is ongoing. In fact, it's been on pause this year while the students are away, but we'll hopefully get started again soon. So at this point, we have some theoretical predictions for what we should expect to see based on the different potential effects of these techniques, and a little bit of reduced form evidence that I will show right at the very end. So unfortunately for the practitioners, we can't yet tell you the answer to these questions that we're raising, but hopefully we can whet your appetite to find out the answer as we get some more data. So let me tell you about the field experiment first, and then time allowing, I'll try to give you a little bit of theory to suggest what we would expect to see. So this experiment so far went on primarily over the summer and fall of last year. We're working with a Chicago area charity called Umoja, which provides services for low-income youth, and the fundraiser is being carried out in the greater Chicago area throughout a variety of different relatively high-income suburbs. So again, we're interacting here multiple dimensions of treatment. So one is avoidance opportunities. So if these warning flyers and opt-outs sound familiar, these were the treatments used by Delavigne, List, and Malmonnier in their QJE paper in order to identify the existence of social pressure effects. We're going to interact these with these two fundraising techniques to try to isolate whether there are social pressure effects from these tools. And so these techniques can be announced either at the door or potentially also on the flyer that gets put on the door warning the potential donors that the fundraiser is coming. So assuming that someone opens the door, the process is that the solicitor introduces him or herself, says, I'm working for the University of Chicago, and I'm here to talk to you about this charity, Umoja. They describe the charity a little bit, and then they read one of these three scripts. So I guess I should have put the sort of control script first instead of last, but the voluntary contribution mechanism is simply asking, would you like to make a contribution today by cash, check, or credit card? Alternative treatments that are randomly assigned are the seed treatment, where the solicitor says the first $5,000 has already been raised thanks to a seed grant by an anonymous donor. And the gift treatment, the solicitor says, as a token of our appreciation, we would like to provide you this free Umoja pen just for talking with us. So those are the three things that can happen after the door is open. Before the door is open, a randomly selected set of households will get flyers on the doorknob. So the first is the simple, what we call the warn treatment. So it says fundraising campaign for Umoja Student Development Corporation. Fundraisers will visit this address tomorrow, and then the date and times are actually filled in. Fundraisers will come to raise funds for Umoja. On the right is the opt-out version of this, so it contains the exact same information, but there's also a box here that says check this box if you do not want to be disturbed. So this should make it even easier for the household to avoid the ask if they want to do so. So we have a variety of different types of flyers here. So I just showed you the warn and the opt-out. We've got interactions of these with the different fundraising techniques, which I'll show you in just a second. So these same flyers, but they provide you with information either about the gift of a pen or the seed money. And we've also experimented a little bit with different types of opt-outs. So in addition to this checkbox, we tried providing a code that you could text in order to opt out, or having sort of a tear-off perforated thing on the bottom of the flyer, just to make sure that we were, in fact, making it very easy for people to opt out if they wanted to. So here are examples of those sort of combination flyers. So on the left is the gift opt-out. So the italics part is what is different from the regular opt-out. It says, as a token of our appreciation, we'll give you a Moja pen just for talking with us tomorrow. And similarly, the seed opt-out tells you about this seed money in addition to the other stuff. So here's the sample in all of these different treatments that we have. So as you can see, we get a lot of different treatment arms by fully interacting each of these things. So the first 3 here are without a flyer. So the baseline is simply that you get the VCM, the seed script, or the gift script. Then for each of those scripts, we can do warnings with or without the information on that technique that's being used. And so you see this gives you a lot of different cells. There's about 1,000 households right now in each of these cells, which may seem like a lot, but as many of you know, giving rates are very low. So you need a lot of households to detect any effects. And here we're going to be comparing differences between multiple treatments, which is even more statistically demanding. And so this is why the table that I show you at the end is not going to have very many stars in it. The model that we're using here also is building off of the work of Delavigne, List, and Malmanier. So we think about a potential donor here who answers the door for the solicitor. This subject has wealth W and gives gifts in the amount of G to the solicitors. And we're going to introduce into this model a dummy variable Z for whether we're using a fundraising technique. So you can think of this as either the pen or the seed, whichever you prefer. And the utility function has the same form as in that paper. But the parameters here are now going to depend on whether or not we're using the fundraising technique. So utility is, first of all, kind of a standard utility of income, which is your wealth minus however much you give away. Then you have this altruism parameter A multiplied by this convex function V that accounts for both how much you're giving and how much you think other people are giving. And then potentially you have some social pressure S. So altruism, rather than simply being this parameter A, we're going to add to it gamma A if the fundraising technique is being used. So throughout here we're going to use gammas to show effects of fundraising techniques, and then the subscript on the gamma tells you where it's entering. So similarly, for the expected gifts by others, G minus I, you have gamma capital G, which reflects that, okay, maybe I think that other people will give more if I know that this organization is giving out pens. And then we have the social pressure function. So I think the most important part is to the far right, the indicator, which says that you have a social pressure cost if the amount of money that you give is less than some norm amount. So in the data, this appears to be about $10. A lot of people give only $10, so that would be GS here. But that norm could be shifted by this fundraising technique as well. So we allow that to occur. So if, in fact, the amount that you give is less than that norm amount, then you're going to pay this psychic cost S, and that too can vary with the fundraising technique. So maybe I feel worse if I'm given a pen and I don't give back to the charity. All right, so throughout here, we're essentially allowing these to affect any component of the utility function. And to make the notation a little bit more concise, I'll use subscripts of 0 or 1 to indicate 0 for no fundraising technique, a 1 if there is a fundraising technique being used. So to decide how much to give, the individual solves this utility maximization problem. So just choosing the value of G that maximizes the utility function that I just showed you. The solution to this problem has the form where, depending on the level of your altruism, you may not give, you may give less than this norm GS. You may give exactly that amount so that you just barely avoid this social pressure cost, or you can give more than that amount. And so there are different threshold levels of altruism at which you're going to give these different amounts. I think probably I'm short enough on time that I will not really go try to explain these, but just note by comparing the thresholds on the left versus the ones on the right, in each case you've got the introduction of some of these gamma parameters, and so you can see these thresholds are going to be shifted around in different ways by the different potential effects of these techniques. Whether or not you want to be at home if you get one of these warning flyers is kind of a similar decision. Here you're choosing H, the probability that you're going to be at home. So with probability 1 minus H, you won't be home and you'll give 0. With probability H, you will be home and you'll give G star, which is whatever was the solution to your giving problem on the previous page. So what we get out of this is a set of predictions. So depending on how these techniques affect the donor's utility, this is going to affect the distribution of responses in different ways. So for example, gamma A, the effect on your altruism towards the charity, is going to lower all of these threshold altruism levels. So if your altruism increases, your baseline altruism doesn't need to be as high in order for you to reach any of these particular giving amounts. Some of these mechanisms shift one of these thresholds and not the other, or shift them in different ways. So this ultimately is going to help us identify each of these from different moments of the distribution. Let me just kind of focus on the ones in words, 4 and 5 here, because I think they're fairly intuitive. So if the fundraising technique is announced on the warning, then it can affect your probability of being home to answer the door in either direction. If it's working through altruism, then your probability should increase because you'll want to be home in order to give money to the charity. If, however, you know that this is going to increase the social pressure you feel if you're at home and you don't give, then your probability decreases. You'll be less likely to be at home. Similarly, conditional on being at home, so say there's no flyer, if this works through altruism, you'll see more large gifts. If it works through social pressure, you won't see any change in the number of large gifts. You'll only see changes in the number of small gifts that people use just to avoid that social pressure cost. So here are the results. As I've said, big table, not very many stars. Let me just focus your attention on the first column, which is the share of households answering the door. So first two are just about the script, which shouldn't affect whether you answer the door, and so far they don't. The warning flyer and the opt-out flyer both are significantly reducing the number of households who are answering the door. This is consistent with the work that we're building off of. Other things don't so far have significant effects. Let me also just quickly go across the second row. So when we offer a gift, we do see some increases in the amounts donated. It seems to possibly be coming more from large gifts versus small gifts. And the gift warn flyer seems to maybe increase the probability of being home. But of course, again, we don't have enough power to say that for sure. So this is maybe consistent with gifts increasing altruism, but this is very preliminary. So at this point, we just want to emphasize that these fundraising techniques can increase donations in multiple ways. The theory predicts that we can distinguish which of these mechanisms it is, and hopefully soon we'll have more evidence on which of these are in effect. Thanks.